Before we begin, two messages. What mobile platform do companies like eBay, NBC Universal, the Los Angeles Times, Razorfish, and PayPal use to build their cross-platform native applications? Titanium by Appcelerator. They aren't alone. There are now over 25,000 apps deployed by Appcelerator, which has been called the Rosetta Stone of app development. And you can start now for free. Just go to www.appcelerator.com for more information. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. Hello everybody and welcome to Untether.tv. I'm your host, Rob Woodbridge. This is that place you come to each and every day to find out the latest happenings in the mobile industry, to find out those guys and gals who are actually creating this industry as we're breathing and living it, paving the way for some of the services and features and products that we're going to be using in the near future. Today, very special guest, really special guest, especially because I was involved in the mobile gaming space and in the gaming space, and certainly with a resume like Scott Lehman's, you will understand how excited I am to have Scott on. Scott is the founder of textPlus. He was also Scott. Were you a founder of any of the other companies that you had, like Jamdat?
Jamdat, I was the founder. In fact, with two of my partners that are co-founders of textPlus as well. And at Activision, I was probably the 50th employee at that restart. So certainly not the founder.
No, but you know, the restart of Activision, but Jamdat, you know, everybody, you're probably sick to death of talking about that story. A big acquisition by EA to get them literally probably into the mobile gaming space as a publisher. But welcome. I really appreciate you coming on, Scott. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here. It's nice to meet you over Skype for the first time.
Yes. And likewise, and we're having some connection issues. Just some of the video might be a little bit laggy, just simply because it is such a great distance, and there's so much stuff going on here that it's just clogging up the airwaves. So I really want to kind of give an overview or get an overview of what textPlus is and how it's changing the way that we communicate, because really that's what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah, you know, when we started textPlus, and we really launched it in 2009, we launched it to be a free text alternative to what came on your phone. Not only did we think that the internet would allow us to deliver something we called TOIP, or text over IP, which is kind of a joke on VoIP, but we thought that we would be able to provide a lot of new innovative features. At the time, we weren't the first to release group messaging, but it was certainly one of the first features we released. Photos, images. We just thought that text messaging had been around for essentially 20 years and hadn't really evolved as a medium. And when you get a team of people together who had been used to innovating video games at a clip of 10 or 20 a year, seeing a medium that was stagnant for 20 years was a very alluring target.
I can bet. So, I mean, but how do you make that transition from running a mobile game company like Jamdat, where you are putting out all of these products, and it's the perfect attention deficit disorder company, right? Because you get a product in, you get a product out, and then on to the next one. To starting something like textPlus, one product, one focus. How was that?
Yeah, this is the longest I've worked on a single product in my career. I can tell you that. It's been the opposite for me, where it was a publisher, a portfolio of products, you know, the business. It's an interesting question. You know, I felt like there was a very consistent through line from Activision, which was a traditional video game publisher, and I left Activision to start Jamdat. And Jamdat we built to be a mobile game publisher, but very much in the image of Activision. We thought the same model would work. We thought that mobile would be a new platform. It would work a lot like PlayStation or Nintendo worked in terms of viewing it as kind of a retail published model, and even though it was a digital goods model, we just thought that really worked. My 6 years at Jamdat, is that what I spent? About 6 years at Jamdat, was probably a master's degree in the mobile business.
Right.
And so where I went from Activision video games to Jamdat mobile games, by the end of Jamdat, I was really in love with the mobile business and prepared to stay in the mobile business with or without games. So that was kind of the skill set had evolved to the point that I felt I could stay in the business. And then my partners and I think in a nutshell, we looked at the business we built on essentially, what was it back in the day then? 25% of the audience at most playing games on phones?
Yeah.
And we built a significant business. Well, we looked and said, what does everybody do on mobile phones? They communicate, they text. And we felt like, wow, we could really get into that business and maybe do some damage. So
that's how you decided on textPlus? Or I mean, you were looking at these opportunities. How are people going to be using these devices?
Yeah, we had stack envy. We looked at the stack that showed the 25% penetration of mobile games, and we saw the 70 to 80% penetration of text messaging, and literally were envious of that, that opportunity. And again, as I said, it was a stagnant market from an innovation perspective. And then I would say we also identified, and this is probably more of our video game mentality, we identified a generation in the U.S., mostly teenagers, who had embraced text messaging as their first choice of communication.
Right.
My partner Zach liked to say that text is their voice. And we felt that this was a market that was being underserved. Just like when I started at Activision, the video game market was very much a hobbyist enthusiast market. And yet there was a growing generation of folks who really viewed it as a first choice entertainment alternative and just needed to be served higher quality in innovation. Now, of course, that the company has evolved since we started it. The business plan has changed a little bit. The feature set, the vision has certainly evolved as we got into it. But that's always the case with startups, and that's what you almost look for, those opportunities to, as Randy Commissar at Kleiner Perkins says, it's all about getting to Plan B.
Randy Commissar, The Monk and the Riddle.
The Monk and the Riddle.
One of my favorite books of all time.
Oh, interesting. His new book is called Getting to Plan B.
It is it?
Which is about entrepreneurship and obviously embraces that notion that it really is getting in, and this is such a Silicon Valley mentality. Get in and really learn. It's great to have a vision. You need to steer, but you really need to learn about your market and keep your kind of mind open to what's really going to work.
So, I mean, what was different about, there's got to be so much, but it's a short period of time, from the vision to where you are today.
We thought, I would say back then, our strongest notion, and the name Goji actually is related to this, our strongest notion back in 2007, late 2007, 2008, was that text messaging was as big as the internet, if you viewed it as a network. Yeah. And it could be used as a platform, right? And so our company was about thinking about ideas on top of that platform. Group messaging, free messaging was certainly part of it, social messaging. But we also had a notion that went into more like of the alternate reality type stuff, and using text messaging for commerce, and for real world marketing and out of home marketing. So we had kind of a dual vision, a social side and a commerce side. And fortunately, when we first pitched the company, we knew that we would want to do the social side first, and then the commerce side would follow. Much like MySpace in their heyday managed to take, very successful kind of dating and meeting new people platform and then start to layer commerce on top of it. And that social piece has taken off, and we've been working on that ever since. We haven't had really a chance to get off of that train at all. So.
Well, it was the right first choice. Like you think about the struggles that are going on right now around commerce and transactions, and I mean, we're fighting those battles now, 5 years later.
Yep.
And we're going to be continuing.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad we told our first investor was Kleiner. Very first pitch, we said, this is all about getting this flywheel spinning. And the way we're going to get this flywheel spinning is through the social messaging side. We thought we'd give profiles to teenagers. They could give out their profiles via text message and all kinds of stuff like that. And so that's really evolved into textPlus today.
And so would you say that what you've done is you've simplified that grand vision in 2007 to what it is today?
We overthought it back then. We were too clever. As I said, Goji was our short code. Yeah. 611 GOGII. It didn't really work. But it is, we were way ahead of our own thinking. And it really was much simpler than that. Yes, teenagers want to create a profile, text each other, and meet new people. And then folks of all ages want to save money on a text plan, or they want to turn their connected device into a phone.
Right.
So those are the pieces that worked, and we stayed very alert to those pieces that were working.
You know, I find it's really interesting because you said you had stack envy, right? Which is a really interesting way of looking at it. But most people have stack fear, right? So when you look out and you say, you know, I love the software layer where I can control it, where you know, I'll build a game, for example, or I'll build an application, for example, where I control it, and it's not so much that I'm competing with you know, a carrier or a big, like, or I'm competing with SMS or phone calls, the dial tone that my carrier provides. But you guys came at it and said, listen, no, I mean, stack is where we have to be. This is something that everybody's going to use. Why don't we attack the stack and make a lot of money doing that? It's an interesting approach, obviously.
That's a good point. I mean, I will admit it's taken some courage, and it's kind of a facetious term for courage because we all really know what that word means. But from a business standpoint, it has taken my partners and I some courage to leave behind, if you will, the crutches of games. And great games, for people that are really good at creating games, it's an incredible black art because you can always create differentiation.
Yep.
And if you're good at creating hits, it's exactly as you say. You can create hits and differentiation, and no one can really take that away from you. When you go into more of the utility space that we're in now, you really start to wonder, hey, are we going to be able to bring differentiation? And we did really believe that the market needed innovation, right? And we had worked, Jamdat had been built in partnership with the carriers. That was an important part of Jamdat.
Right,
we weren't off deck, we were on deck. So I had a long history of working with carrier execs, and I did feel that at the end of the day, they will embrace ecosystem and they will embrace innovation. They certainly invited Jamdat onto their decks, and after a year or two of going door to door, we got Goji's original product approved over the short code system in the US and Canada. So we were right about that.
So from that point, you know, it's in, you know, you attack the stack and you've built this up, but you've always maintained that this is going to be free, at least free for the most part. You know, with in-app purchases, and I mean, how is it that you guys can? I mean, we'll come back to Jamdat. I mean, it is a crutch because you can put a game out, and especially when you're on deck. You've got basically a steady stream. I've seen the impact of being on deck in a featured game on inside of a carrier's walled garden at the time. That's a great valuable property, and you guys were able to do that with Jamdat. So now with textPlus, you go the opposite route, which is free. And so how do you convince a bunch of, like, Kleiner, you know, big VCs to put money into you guys on a free model, really before this app ecosystem of free first came out?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were certainly early in the current freemium model, but it really is, you know, it'd probably be more appropriate to say that textPlus is sponsored texting.
Sure. Because
the vast majority of our revenue are ad dollars, where our users choose to let the app be ad supported for free. So, but free is obviously a better marketing message than sponsored, and a clearer message. So textPlus has really been about changing the way we monetize engagement, if you will, right? One way to monetize engagement on text messaging is to have a per message cost. Another way is to have a per bucket cost. Well, one of the things we felt about textPlus is that we're not really that kind of invested in watching those plans go away, frankly. Right? As I said, we've been in business with carriers for a long time. What we are invested in seeing is how the engagement patterns can change and how we can change the way people make money. And whether that means by having ad-supported texting, by having a freemium model with in-app purchases, by incorporating more virtual goods or customization. Some of these things have been done in the kind of operator world before, the carrier world before.
Yep.
That's been what's interesting. And frankly, that's the piece that our carrier partners have liked, that there is a team out there thinking about this, and they've been aware of the fact that some of their models are going to change. obviously, and come under some strain.
Yep.
And so it's been a very important part of their business to in some cases, even legitimately partner with us on figuring this stuff out.
So how does that work with, I mean, because I would look at what you guys are doing as disruptive to the carrier universe. So how do you balance that when you're working with them and at the same time saying, hey, you know, we want to disrupt what you're doing?
Yeah, I think most of the carriers are viewing their world as being disrupted by the internet.
Yeah.
And textPlus is one of the let's call us a symptom, if you will, or certainly one of the examples of that. But we also, unlike many of the companies out there that are disrupting the traditional telephony space, we're connected to the existing telephone infrastructure. Right? We're connected to the PSTN. So in many markets where companies like textPlus exist, there is actually a rise in engagement across overall SMS volume. And so I don't know if you want to say that carriers may view us as the lesser of two evils in terms of internet players or over-the-top players, or they view companies like us as expanding their reach into connected devices, which is something we've done.
Yep.
But certainly that's been the case. We've really been able to partner because of those factors.
And it hasn't, so obviously the relationships that you've created with them, it hasn't ruffled anything. Do they look to you guys as the leading edge of this space?
Some do. I mean, carriers are going to look at us. It's going to be a complicated relationship.
Yes. And
there's going to be some people at carriers that will view us and everything we represent in every company that looks like us as a imminent threat. And others will view us as leading edge and let's learn from them. And others will view us as a potential ongoing partner to help navigate through the way the internet changes. It really is. And that all can exist at one company, right? These are large companies. Yeah. So it's a complicated relationship. It helps that we built a business with them for 6 years previously, right? And that we helped launch an ecosystem that would be kind of a growth market for everybody. That gives us a lot more credibility, I think, in the market than if we were just coming in and pursuing rhetoric like, the carriers are dead and they're destroying the internet and yada yada. And that hasn't been how we've managed our business. It hasn't been how we've been successful in the past. Yeah,
and I think certainly with Jamdat, you've got the history of bringing a substantial amount of revenue to the carrier base, right, as a result of what you've done. So that goes a long way. So what about things like you've been testing your revenue models, is what it sounds like. So that's the greatest thing about mobile, isn't it? There's not just one thing. You're not just buying a game like Activision days, right? Yep. And you're now testing with subscriptions. You're testing with long distance. You're testing with a whole bunch of things. Is that how you're going to build revenue going forward, or are you looking for that one piece that is just this is our revenue path?
I think it will be a portfolio piece. This is my first ad-supported business, and I would have told you a few years ago that I love the paid business and I love creating software that has intrinsic, retail value, and I still do. Tag, yeah. Yep. But the ad space has been good. I mean, it really has been. We've been, I think, one of the winners of that, of mobile marketing and mobile advertising, and our users have been even bigger winners, because we have a lot of users who are very comfortable having banner ads at the bottom of their texting interface in exchange for the price point that we offer. A lot of users. So I don't see that going away. But what we've done recently, our big news recently is that we launched calling in the U.S. and we'll soon launch it in Canada. And that is free for textPlus users. So again, ad supported. But for calling any PSTN, any phone number in the U.S. and soon Canada, it's going to be a few pennies a minute. And so that'll change our revenue mix immediately to be a more put kind of paid or in-app transactions on par with our ad model. I
got to come back to I want to attack both of these really, or talk about these, because you've got tremendous number of users, up to 25 million now users for textPlus.
We're coming up on that many downloads. 25
million downloads, and the growth has been staggering for you guys in terms of text messages being sent and downloads. What do you think is that inflection point where you can where you turned on the revenue from advertising. Is it 1 million people downloads, 10 million downloads? Where was it for you guys?
That we saw kind of tipping. That we saw.
Yeah. That we said, listen, you know what? This is a really valid revenue model for us.
It was about a year ago, maybe a little. Yeah, about a year ago, maybe 5 quarters ago, that we really saw it tip.
Yeah.
So probably at the 10 million download mark.
Okay.
We really saw it starting to, seeing the actives and the uniques be enough that you could really make a difference out there. Starting to see ad networks returning your calls. Starting to get invited to things like our premier publisher events, or starting to get, you've been assigned our tier 1 relationship manager. Those types of things start to happen. I'd probably say 5 quarters ago.
And then, so were you building towards revenue at that point, or did you just turn on revenue when you hit that level? You know what I mean? It's like, did you always go into this saying, listen, we're going to be ad supported or sponsored, and then you just went with it, or did you wait until you had a mass of users?
Yeah, something we did from day one is we wanted to have the notion that we're going to charge for this.
Right.
Or that we're going to have advertising in our app.
Setting expectations?
Setting expectations. That was important to us. And we're just like any other company in the technology space. Had we not done that, we'd be bigger today.
Really?
So much bigger. I mean, we had competitors that were not interested in even having that notion of setting expectations.
So why do you say that you would be bigger? Because people shunned ad-supported apps? That kind of...
Well, in a lot of ways, we need to be as good as native texting, right? Yeah. Native texting doesn't have banner ads,
right?
So there are going to be people who are going to say, "This is not where I belong." Mm-hmm. Just like back in the day where you had net zero.
Yep.
We were called net zero. That was not for everybody, right? Yeah. I'll be okay paying for my, I'll stick with Earthlink.
Yeah.
I don't need ads there. So it's not for everybody, but we wanted to sort of set this message that, look, this is how we provide this service. We're going to invest in it. We did 25 updates in 2011 alone.
It's incredible.
Major updates to the product. So we're going to work for it. But we want you to understand that we want to build a business here. So that's always been,
then you transition. So you've announced that in the States it's textPlus users can call each other. And now you're moving into, was this always the idea, or when did this idea strike you that, listen, because we've got this network now of people that are using it, do you know how many actives you have at a given time? Like, is it, you get 25 million downloads, but...
We don't give that out, but many millions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, many millions. I would assume, but now you've got literally. I come from a city. City I'm in is Ottawa, and there's 1 million people in here. So you've got the equivalent to many cities this size, probably a good number of people. And were you looking at, now what do we offer them, or did you always have the idea of going into this space?
I would say that it all changed for us when we realized we could give out real phone numbers.
Yeah.
That was kind of, and that's been, oh boy, I should check the date on this, but it's been at least a year and several months, like maybe approaching a year and a half.
Okay.
And before that, we always felt like, wow, we're going to be a little bit different flavor of a communication service, right? We're over short code. You're downloading this app, and this is great. But when the first few times we started thinking about a phone number, we weren't sure if it was going to be possible with some of the choices we had made. Mm-hmm. But we did some digging, and we realized, you know what? We can get phone numbers. We can give out phone numbers. We can maybe discontinue doing our service over short code and do it over, traditional phone number.
Yeah.
And now you're basically a virtual operator.
Right.
And we need to offer voice on this phone number. I mean, why wouldn't you? You already got the infrastructure costs of providing that phone number. It's already enabled. And ever since that time, we really have been more focused on building what we think of as a virtual operator, which is very ironic because Sybase several months ago started to coin the term for companies like ours to be called NUVOs, which stands for Network Unaffiliated Virtual Operator.
Right.
And the term NUVO and the concept of the NUVO was actually ratified by the CTIA in their most recent board meeting, or in a board meeting a couple months ago. So it's kind of been an interesting journey.
Is it funny that or ironic that you start by saying, listen, text message is the new voice, is voice for the new generation, and then a number of years later you end up offering voice connectivity to that generation?
It is ironic, and what happened? It's still text is still for us the big driver, and I anticipate it will remain the big driver, but. They want to give out their number, right? I want to have one number. I want to have one extra number, if you will, and I want to be able to text from it. And if somebody needs to reach me, I need to make a call. I want to use it.
Yeah.
So, so for our core audience, that's the mentality. It's going to be interesting to see if adding voice services brings an entirely different audience.
Well, that was my next question. Yeah. What I mean, is that's the hope? Obviously, is that. It's not just the people who are dropping carriers, home phone numbers that you're attracting here, but it's not just the young generation or the new generation. There are guys my age, guys older than me, getting rid of the home phone number and wanting that single point of reference, but not wanting to pay through the teeth to have everything done through a cell phone.
I'll tell you how I use our calling product. I have Verizon. I have AT&T. I'm the last person to ask how about existing operators. I have relationships with 3 of them at once, but I don't get good cell service at my house.
Right.
But I have great Wi-Fi. So I've been for a number of months now using our calling product from my house and making perfect calls. And that's been a great use for me.
That's incredible. I think about my father lives in the country, we'll say, like in a rural area, and he tried to go without a home phone number. He went and picked up an iPhone. He's 72. And was going to move into this thing. And then he got to his house, no home phone number, pulled out his iPhone, no bars, right? No coverage. Across the street he could get coverage, but not in his house. Oh, so man. He turned around and went back to, the carrier, handed back the phone and took back his home phone and hasn't looked back since. So this is one of those options for these guys who are looking to have a portable phone and leverage that so that when they're in their house and they don't have coverage, they can use their Wi-Fi connectivity.
That's right. And he doesn't even need to use it on a phone. He can use it on an iPod or an iPad or an Android tablet. So you don't even need to have a carrier contract to do that particular use case.
So, I mean, what are your hopes? What are your expectations about this? Because this is a recent launch. I mean, and we're going into 2012, and this is obviously a big play for you guys. What are your hopes here?
I think we want to kind of reflect that people have a choice in how they want to communicate over their phones, that they can change their relationship. They don't necessarily need to enter into a contract. They certainly can enter into a contract, but there are many alternatives out there for pay-as-you-go, very economically priced communication services that are essentially carrier grade. I wouldn't suggest that we're at Verizon or AT&T levels across the board, but for the price point, substantially good quality.
Right.
And there's you can make that choice today. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Finish your sentence, please. Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of back in the day where people decided they didn't necessarily want to buy entire albums anymore, and they bought singles, and they and once again, the internet seems to be a choice driver, if anything. And
I love
telephony is a place where you'll see more choice.
And it's the same way that we talk about marketing in the mobile space. It's that conversation that it's not a broadcasting mechanism anymore. It is a tailored one-to-one relationship. So I might like to get a direct message on Twitter as opposed to an email, I might like to get a like an urban airship direct message when I'm nearby a location. It's the same thing around communications now. It's like, I know that these 4 people like to be texted. This group that I meet with once a month, they like to be texted, but these 3 guys like to be phoned, and so you're creating a strategy, a communication strategy, whether you know it or not, because of the choice, as you said.
That's right.
It's pretty incredible.
That's right. It's been incredible. And, for some of our users, we're the first phone service they've ever had. They sign up for us at 13, and our goal probably is to try to earn that user's loyalty for their life. I look forward to one day, years from now, meeting people who've had a textPlus number since 2009.
That's incredible. And
that'll be, well, I guess they could have only gotten it in 2010, but that'll be a great experience for me.
What about that commerce play? Are you almost at that point now? That kind of, the duality that you talked about in 2007, where it was social and commerce. Are you now looking at that a little bit deeper as to how do we enable this platform to do transactions, to do those things that we wanted to do 5 years ago?
Probably not that specific vision. The market for just providing core communication services is so large right now that I think we'll be focused on unlocking that just over the next few years. And so the types of activities you'd see with that is platform expansion to different flavors of handsets and different platforms. You'll see geographic expansion to different territories. I mean, this is back to that stack envy.
Yeah.
Texts and calls is a worldwide 6 billion people phenomenon.
That's right.
And so we're probably looking at expanding our business in that way.
I love attacking the stack. It's just such a, there are a handful of companies that would do that. And many people are just very comfortable. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are and founders who are looking at this and trying to build a business on top of this, like away from the stack, right? Like a Jam Dad, but everybody can build a game now in their basement and with the hopes. But I always ask that question, like, how do you make a sustainable living in the mobile industry if you aren't attacking the stack, if you aren't a core service that people are going to use every single day? It becomes a challenge, right? Even if you have, I look at a company like Instagram, 13 or 14 or 15 million users for their application, and kind of testing revenue models. But at some point, you've got to be able to turn that on and start to generate revenue. And it's very difficult, I think, to your point, to turn on revenue at 15 million users, and then because you're crossing your fingers and hoping you get it right?
Yeah. They obviously took a quality path that I hope rewards them.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you would love to see quality reward a team like that with everything they've done. But you're right. We didn't want to invent a revenue model necessarily here. I wouldn't say we invented, but we're certainly one of the pioneers of ad-supported texting.
Yeah.
But on the voice, we're much less clever, right? People pay for voice minutes.
It's okay.
And
there's a model there.
There's a model there, and that was fine with us.
Yeah.
And we may try some, we'll try some innovation around the edges of that model, which will be interesting.
Yeah.
And we'll try to introduce some new things. But at the core, people understand, when I call my cousin Jim, I'm paying per the minute, whether I have a bucket or not. So,
and that hasn't changed. Well, I gotta ask you one more question, Scott.
Sure.
So I consider what you guys are doing, textPlus, and what you guys are doing at the stack, disruptive. But if you were to look at this industry that you're in, the text industry, and now into the voice industry, what would you say you look at like as disruptive? Is there anything that you think that will be disrupted over the next 12 or 18 months in your space?
Well, there's two flavors. One thing we think about, there are two flavors of over-the-top services these days. There's companies like us that work very hard to connect to the PSTN and provide the reach to the phone network. Mm-hmm. And there are many other companies who are not going to connect to the PSTN, are really more like IM networks and creating their own flavor and their own closed ecosystems. And they're very different kind of views of the world. Maybe you could argue they're the same view with different timing, right? But we really feel strongly about this PSTN, about these 6 to 7 billion phone numbers worldwide.
Open network, right?
Open network. Anybody can connect in. We even think of it that, your phone number is your username on this PSTN. It's the largest social network in the world, mm-hmm. right? And the nice thing about it is it's not as vulnerable to style. It's not as vulnerable to the it crowd, to the trendy place.
Yep.
As certain services can be. So we like those aspects of it, but it's a very interesting kind of difference in the approach. And I wouldn't knock the other models. Certainly, the nice thing about textPlus, every user who comes into textPlus then joins our app-to-app network and can use either to the PSTN or to the app-to-app network. Yeah. And we like that, but that's very different. So I'd see that over the next 12 to 24 months. I think you will continue to see some operators choose a block or legal mode against VoIP companies. Yep. And so you're still seeing that in territories here and there. Again, I think we've learned we're a lot more sophisticated these days in the internet business about thinking about how are we going to deal with disruption. And I think we found in the past that blocking, tackling, setting the lawyers loose, government regulation hasn't necessarily been a successful strategy. And
it hasn't.
and what's great is because of that experience, that's not really what you see as the predominant response.
Yeah,
you really do see. It's really interesting to see the carriers themselves launch VoIP services and very interesting telephony services. So I think everybody's much better at this.
Yeah. I think that the immediate reaction is always going to be protect, and I know that. It was RIM's reaction, and it's interesting because as a manufacturer, you talk about that closed network. There was a company out of Waterloo that was doing cross-platform, basically the equivalent to RIM's Messenger, and they shut them down. And I think that the realization is that it was probably not the right thing to do for the proliferation of that specific platform. And now they're looking at opening it up and doing exactly what this company did 2 years ago. So you're right. I think that the realization that there is a happy balance. But it has to be, as you said, there are 6 billion devices out there, and the idea of having independent siloed networks is a big challenge. And hopefully we've seen the end of this, whatever it's these legal launch legal first, and then ask questions after, right?
That's right. Hopefully we will. It's a kind of drain on innovation, but we're seeing a lot less of it, which is great.
So, is there anything that what excites you? Last question. What excites you about what's coming down the road for you guys, or in your space, or just in the mobile industry altogether?
I feel like we are now done with the core functionality we need to be a virtual operator, right? Voice, text. Those are the two big pieces of it. We've got a couple features left to roll out, voicemail and stuff like that, but once that's done, I'm not going to spend our energy on, changing a revenue model, and I'm going to focus a lot of time on distribution, whether it's internationally or to platforms. But there will come a time in the next several months where we do try to change maybe the model a little bit here of what it means to make a call, what it means to make a message, how those two can interplay together in fun ways, more interesting interfaces with your calling or your texting, just maybe unleashing my team's old video game not make necessarily games, but unleash their creativity a little bit.
Yeah.
And once again, that dial pad sure hasn't changed in many years, has it?
No, it hasn't.
And so I look at the space and I think, okay, there's still room for us to do some creative stuff.
Is that around? That's got to be around like making it seamless or frictionless, or like I don't have to remember this 9-digit, 10-digit, anything.
All of the above, absolutely. All of the above.
Okay.
So we'll probably have some time this year to invest some cycles in that.
I love that.
That makes us excited.
And patient investors, obviously. You've got some of the big guys. They've been patient with you guys throughout this wayfinding and as you've developed the company.
Yeah, they have been very patient. They've been great. We have Kleiner and Matrix and in Los Angeles, Mark Suster and GRP Partners, and they've all been really patient. And I think it looks like Kleiner's going to have an exit with Zynga in the next few days, or whatever. Yeah. And I think that makes them more patient. Exactly. We're a rounding error on Zynga, so I don't think they even notice us anymore. So
that's right. As long as you're not pulling. And certainly good opportunities there. Well, you know what, Scott, I really appreciate you coming on. How do people find out about, if they haven't downloaded textPlus, where can they find out more information about you guys?
Probably the best place is textplus.com.
Okay. And obviously iOS, Android available right now?
iOS, Android, and we will be announcing another mobile platform in the near future.
Okay. So well, I hope it's one from Canada at some point, right?
I hope so too. It's interesting. We are not as strong in Ontario as we are in other provinces in Canada. We're very successful in Canada. We have a huge following, but BlackBerry's backyard is probably one of our weaker territories, which makes sense to me. So
it would. Well, hopefully you guys can proliferate. I'll start my network and bringing the channel in that way as well. Do my best. Scott,
well,
I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. I watched what you did with Jamdad. I ran a mobile game company when we were watching this happen and when you were doing. It was pretty amazing to watch, and that exit was spectacular. Gave us all hope, and I love the fact that you go from one area like that where it's. I saw it on the Andrew Warner interview where you said, listen, it's kind of a gut feeling. And the space that you were in was the great space, and I think that what you're doing here is something that is equally as important. And I love that you're attacking the stack. So all the best to you guys.
Thank you. It's always about the team, and we had a great team at Jamdad, a great team here, and we really love what we're doing. So
I love it. I love it. I've been speaking with Scott Lehman, who is the founder and CEO of textPlus. Go to textplus.com, download it for Android or iOS in their respective app stores. Scott, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Folks, for you who are still watching or listening, you know that I love that you do that. Thank you. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I appreciate that you take a few minutes out of your day, every day, to listen to these. If you find value in it, let me know. If you have a suggestion, let me know at untether@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And that's it. We'll see you next time on untether.tv. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.